Autopilot just really coming into the full self-driving side of things. You know, you could technically just type in where you're going and it'll take you there. I think that opens up quite a bit for people that are just wanting to experience it for the first time now. And that's impressive state of it. Like my wife, for example, she's never wanted to drive in full self-driving just because she's wants to control everything. She's in risk mitigation, so she always wants to have a control point for all of the things that she does, which I totally understand. But with using full self-driving, it's more like you're monitoring in a cockpit. If you're an airline pilot, you're making sure that the car is going where it's supposed to go. You're making sure everything is operating like it should, but you're not wanting to do the normal, hand on the wheel, feet on the accelerator and the brake, that type of driving. So it's there to take you where you're supposed to go, but you do have to monitor it and make sure it's there. A lot of people trip up is that they don't want to relinquish control and they don't really trust it and they don't feel like it's there. We just went down to Austin a couple weeks ago and 95% of the time the vehicle was driving. We're really just making very small changes. If you're wanting to switch lanes and it's not switching lanes at that point, you can instruct it to switch lanes by just pressing the turn signal. If you're the first time getting into it, you can actually make a case for it a lot better than you could have 5 years ago.
I think one of the coolest things with Cybertruck FSD, it manages its own speed based on the traffic, right? So if everyone around you is driving 5 miles over, it'll also drive 5 miles over. If everyone's driving 10 miles over, it'll also drive 10 miles over. So it doesn't try to outpace other vehicles. It doesn't try to be too slow unless you specifically tell it to, because you can actually manage the speed, right? You can cap it at whatever you want. I think it goes up to 85 miles an hour. But it keeps pace with the rest of traffic, right? So it's very human-like, because it's what a human would do, right? So you start questioning, well, what would a human do in this particular situation? And then when you get really good at it, you can even call it out. Like there are certain situations for me, I live in more of a lot of country roads, a lot of farm roads and things like that, where they're not built very well, the turns are kind of weird, there's a bunch of, let's say big hills and stuff like that, in weird areas. And there are multiple times where I'm like, I would do this in this setting. I'm like, let's see if the car does it. And it does, right? It does something that I would do as a human. So they put a significant amount of focus on what would a human being do in those circumstances. Because it also emboldens trust, right? The car, if you really think about self-driving vehicles, the whole purpose of it is it needs to convince you that you need to trust it, right? So that there's this interesting level of communication the vehicle has with the person inside the vehicle that the vehicle is driving. When previously we are in control of the car, now the car is in control, but it needs to reciprocate and tell us what it sees, what it's feeling, what it's doing, right? And that further emboldens the trust as the user inside the vehicle. And that's why they have this UI, right? And you can even expand out. So it's at any point, there's no situation where it's I don't know what the car sees or doesn't see, because this is real time. And this is a direct feed, right? It is an actual direct feed of what does the vehicle see. So once you start using it, there's a big trust factor, right? One of the biggest arguments is, well, I can't just trust it to do everything I needed to do. I tell people you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to just trust technology with your life, right? That doesn't make any sense. It takes some building. So you use it enough, then you start questioning, why shouldn't I trust it?
Yeah, last couple days ago, I was driving on the tollway, exiting off of a busy tollway onto a service road, and due to the weather, the stoplights at the four-way stop were flashing red only, so they weren't working properly. So that was a real good test for full self-driving, to see how it would react to that. So you had multiple cars in multiple lanes in all four directions, coming to four-way stop with flashing red lights. And as we inched closer and realized that the time has come to see how well full self-driving is going to operate, and it literally came up to the stoplight, let the people that were ahead of us pass, as well as watch the person oncoming before it made its move. So that was a very human interaction that it had with that scenario, and that's super impressive, because a lot of times you think that what's the really the final stage of autonomy. It's what happens when you're at a four-way stop, and how do these cars communicate, and that used to be the way we would think, is how do they communicate with each other. Well, this was able to navigate that scenario without communicating with these other cars or the traffic signals, which is incredibly impressive.